putting 130 grams of white flour, 165 grams of whole wheat flour, 8 grams of gluten, and 4 grams of salt. So total flour content is 300 grams, about 300 grams. Then I put some starter, which is about 60 grams of starter. You can just use yeast. You can just put half a teaspoon of yeast if you have all day to do this, or a whole teaspoon of yeast if you only have like 3 hours to do it. And then water, I put 265 grams of water, but you only need about 235 grams. I have a very high hydration, about 88%. You'll only need 78%, which will make it just about as wet as this, because your climate there is a lot more humid. When you do the stretch and folds, like I'm doing here, I did about 30 to 40 times every 15 minutes, and after each time you see the dough gets smoother. This is the second time right now, and it's smoother than the last one. Make sure your hands are wet so that the dough doesn't stick to you. And then after you do that, you fold it over itself so that the smoother side is on the outside. And then you let it sit for another 15 minutes. I did this about 3 times. No, I did this exactly 3 times, but you don't have to do it exactly 3. You can do 4 or 5 if you have the time. So here I'm putting it out in a container. Ideally, the container would be skinnier and you would be able to see how much the volume is. But here, because I did another dough, I knew how much it was. So once it doubled, I flipped it out. I forgot to tape the beginning of this flipping out, but basically you flip it out and you fold it like a letter in thirds over itself, and then you just keep stretching it. If you're smart, you're not gonna do this directly on the board. You'll put a silpat underneath on which you're gonna bake it. A silpat or parchment paper, but since we have silpat, might as well use silpat. And then you let it sit there for about 20 minutes. And here's the disaster. See how nervous I was? I couldn't get it off the board because it was too big and too thick. I mean, too thin and too big. It wasn't even stuck to the board. It was just not possible to do because it was very, very soft dough. So make sure you have something underneath so you can transfer it directly. This was a big disaster. I was so sad. The dough was so nice, and then oh gosh. Oh, so sad. Oh, tried to save it, but couldn't. And the oven was very hot. Make sure you get the oven hot, hot, hot. And here I just put it on the very bottom of the oven, and it stays in there for 3 minutes. See, that time I was smart. That was the second one. So the first one came out after 3 minutes, and I'm putting on the tomato paste. And then I put some pizza seasoning on there. Layer onions on top. Though love this one. And then spinach. Make sure you get the spinach as dry as you can. Otherwise it seeps into the dough and it's nasty. Soggy dough, not fun. Those are mushrooms. I know they don't look like mushrooms. They're those big, huge, penis-looking mushrooms. I sliced them. And that's feta cheese. Fat-free crumbled feta from Trader Joe's. More feta cheese. Yummy. I love feta and spinach. That's my favorite pizza flavoring or pizza topping. Those are sun-dried tomatoes I just soaked up and chopped. So then it all goes back in the oven for another 3 minutes. And then it's done! Woohoo! So total baking time is 6 minutes.